We struggle through sometimes, but right now I think we're at our strongest.
Overall, for me, BlizzCon, the World Championship, means everything in regards to redemption for myself, my team, and my region. It's been a long time since North America proved they can be the best, and I'm hoping my team is the team that can change that.
Hello and welcome back to the beautiful Blizzard Arena here in Burbank, California. My name is Cloakin and we have one more match to go here in Group C. But let me give you a quick recap of how all the action has gone down. In the winners match, we saw Dignitas take a 2-1 victory over Roll20. They secured the first spot to BlizzCon out of Group C. Then, in the elimination map, Tempest took a 2-0 win over Latin America's Red Canids. They get to move on. Red Canids had to call an end to their tournament. And now, in the decider match, can Roll20 from North America hold off against the experience and skill of Tempest from Korea? Only one spot remains for Group C to go to BlizzCon. Who's gonna take it? Let's head over to the desk and hear their thoughts.
It's a very good question, Kevin, as that is what was on everyone's minds, especially coming into this group as a whole. Who was going to be ending up in this final series? Was it going to be Dignitas? Was it going to be Tempest? Was it going to be Roll20? The three big names of this group. And now we've whittled it down to Roll20 going up against Tempest. But just to recap what we had before, Red Canids going up against Tempest. Jay Howe, it's unfortunate, of course, for Red Canids to have to be in a group as stacked as this, and especially since now people like Jay Shrite will be going their separate ways.
It does kind of feel that way, but at the same time, it really felt like our group of death has kind of been the group of uneasiness that we've had so far, all the way from Roll20, whether it be the drafts or inconsistent play early, or whether Tempest, who at times has just looked, we don't know what, the talents, everything's kind of all over the place, but Tempest starting to put it together towards the end there against Roll20 could be there, but again, Latin America did see their way out.
Other thoughts on how Red Canids were able to perform in this group so far?
I said it before and I say it again, I really feel it's the best performance that we've seen from LATAM teams so far. I was really impressed by them.
Yeah.
I think they stepped up their draft game immensely. Their drafts looked so much crisper. And with a bit of better execution, I think they had a chance on Tomb, where I like their draft against Roll20 a lot. And also against Tempest, they traded really well into a Korean Dream, which is on a skill level just above them.
Yeah.
So I was very impressed by their performance.
Let's check in with the bracket and see exactly how things have rounded out so far, as well as the one final series to come. Up to the top-hand side, we do have Team Dignitas advancing on with that 2-0 against Roll20 in the winners match. And now that brings us all the way down here to Roll20 esports going up against Tempest. Grubby, this is going to be quite the clash with a lot on the line, both for Korea and North America.
Yeah, #1 seed from North America, Kalaris, against the #3 seed from Korea. Dignitas was probably going to advance if people looked at this group, and it was always going to come down to these two to see who would be taking the second seed. And it all comes down to this best of 3.
How have they looked throughout this group to you guys? Have they impressed? Have they disappointed slightly? What do you make of the situation? Let's start with Roll20 esports.
Well, I feel like Roll20 generally has looked a little better than Tempest, just going off of the games that they've had so far. Although they looked shaky against Red Canids, it was kind of their own making, because they said, Red Canids doesn't really get to play in this group, we won't show anything, and that's their loss. But against Dignitas, there were definitely moments of brilliance, cool drafts, pretty good execution, a little bit too many individual mistakes. But overall, it looked like draft and gameplay hung together in a better way, more coherent than Tempest.
I think for me, though, I actually said this when Gilly and I casted Tempest earlier, is that the flexibility of a roster can sometimes be a very good thing, but when it comes time to playing it at the top tier, you might struggle in some of the intricacies of certain heroes. But when Tempest falls back to a little bit more standard of what they know, kind of what got them to where they are, and didn't try and do too much with what they had, they actually looked much better. So I'd like to see them play a little bit more to their comforts, to their strengths that we've known them to play throughout all of HGC.
For me personally, I have to say that Tempest looks the least refined from all 3 Korean teams that we have, and it's also reflected in the results that they see in scrims. What surprised me probably the most from Roll20 was that they came in with a lot of confidence. Glorong was just oozing it the entire time, and that wasn't really reflected in their play. So they didn't play bad, but after everything that I heard from them throughout the week, I really expected them to play on a different level, and the execution wasn't just quite there what I expected.
Well, of course, our first team coming into this match is Roll20, as they look to try and continue on North American success that we've seen so far in the past 2 weeks, Grubby. Past 2 days even, I should say. 2 weeks would be a long time.
Yeah, I mean, it's logical for them to seem very confident after such a glowing record online, but the international stage is always a different scenario.
Yeah.
Now, good news for them is they did prepare a lot of different things, and I think their bag is not quite empty yet of special strats.
I think special strats is definitely going to be the name of the game for this team. We did see that when there's some of their special strats are just different than others, whether it's the Medivh style, the Diablo, we saw the Garrosh earlier, the Kuromi that kind of comes in. It's not necessarily out too crazy out of the meta right now, but that is some strengths that they have that kind of is just off meta, but still very strong for what they like to do.
But you know what the difficulty is now? I've experienced this myself as a competitor. When you have a lot of different, cool, good strategies, now it's a best of 3. Now you have to pick one, and that's pretty difficult because everything is on the line. Best of 3, 3 chances. Doesn't matter if you have 7 strats. You got to choose something good.
Makes sense.
The interesting thing when it comes to their strats is that they said from the beginning that they are willing to show it all in the group stage.
Right.
Now, of course, it's even more important since it is an elimination match for them. But they said from the get-go, we are showing everything we have because we have so many different things prepared here. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to now.
Let's take a look at Tempest on the other side of the battlefield, staring down their North American opponents. What have you grasped from Tempest during the day?
When they are able to go Task Tracer comfortably, then it looks good. But when it's not in the comfort level that they like to play within, it's tough. Again, the flexibility's been there. Honkono, you know, we saw a very interesting build. Double Cocktail into Wizen Duelist at 7. And that's very hit or miss most of the time. We were talking about that backstage, Grubby.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just feels different, and sometimes different isn't always a good thing, but sometimes it works.
And I gotta say, just to kind of go on with that, with the talent picks that you pointed at here, Jayao, it has definitely been very different. I think Tempest, if they kind of reined in the wish to impress with special stuff and just played a little bit more stably, that would be better for them. And we're talking about the evolution of a team here in a tournament. If Tempest does not evolve beyond some of the antics that we've seen, just on paper, Roll20 is going to win this one. Now, if Tempest suddenly has like a wake-up call and stops things like Haymaker and Wizen Duelist, then I think they have a better shot.
Okay, let's check in with the global cheer bar to see how things is going in progress as you continue to cheer for your favorite teams in the Twitch chat, and it's progressing along quite nicely. 26 million and over is a massive amount of cheering. A huge thank you to the HGC universe out there. So, Kaldor, I want to hear your thoughts on how you've seen Tempest going so far in this tournament.
I think they were expected to be the team that either makes it out of the group as the first seed because they just show that Korean dominance that we are expecting from teams, or to find themselves at least in the match that we are having right now. What I want to see from them is, I can only echo what Grubby said, but for me particular, it's reflecting onto Honkono, because when he's on the melee, the aggression that he shows, I like that he wants to be out there, wants to prove himself, and wants to actually get kills and be aggressive, but I think he overdoes it. And currently teams are punishing him hard for that. And that's how a lot of the kills against them happened and how a lot of team fights went wrong. So if he reins it in a little bit more and coordinates attacks better with his team, I think they will be at their most successful. So I would see them to balance this out a little bit more and just fall back on to the superior Korean mechanics that we expect from the region, and also maybe emphasize a bit more the meta game, because so far they've mainly shown team fights.
Let's find out where we're going to go for game number 1, of course, as this best of 3 is about to kick off. Roll20 esports takes us to Warhead Junction.
So we've already seen in Group A that CE hasn't really done their homework when it came to that map and North American strategies. And I guess on our first map here, we're going to find out if Tempest did make sure that they know what's coming.
It's not only knowing what's coming, but well, Birdie told me, it's like, look, if they don't ban it, just in general, if people don't ban Warhead against us, we're playing it, right? And they come right out of the gates. It wasn't banned against them. They get the pick. They obviously have strategies. You talked about several ones. Clearly, they have some. And as Kaldor said, we saw what happened when they weren't prepared for the NA meta of Boss Nuke charge.
Well, things are about to get nuclear. Game number 1. This series determines who moves on to BlizzCon and who goes home, Grubby.
Good atmosphere here among Roll20. Laughter is always a great way to dispel some of the tension that the teams might be feeling, but it will take more than a good mentality to win out here. Good drafting is very important.
Tempest removing Medivh is, I think, understandable, considering that we have Glorang on the team and he's absolutely known for it. For me, it's really just a question, do they know how fast North American teams try to snowball here with boss control and also nukes? If they do, then I think they have a good shot here. But at the same time, I expected that also from the Chinese region, and it never really happened. So that's my biggest question.
And the funny thing is, CE
said... I mean, here we go.
Okay, right now, this is the thing. I mean, to Kaldor's point, Medivh is a later game hero. He's not an early game hero. And it just echoes to the point of they're not sure. It's a respect towards an individual, but it's not an individual on a map. And Zarya, if you guys remember, there's a game against Gale Forces out there. It was quicker than the draft.
So CE, the Chinese team, said they study all the teams and they failed to anticipate the strategy by Tempo to do a level 6 team boss into a keep, 5-minute keep. They studied. And we had MVP Black, they said, we barely studied foreign teams. So I don't know where Tempest is at.
The one thing that I criticized with CE quite a lot was not even that they lost the keep. I think that could have been avoided.
Yeah.
It was the failure to anticipate what would come after
second.
it was shown 3 times to you.
Yes.
And I think that if Tempest gets the chance to adapt to something, they will do that within the series. So, but at the same time, I also expect Roll20 to execute it a bit cleaner. So if they get an opportunity, they will immediately try to snowball that in. And if Tempest, after Morales, Zarya pick right in the first rotation, doesn't already see like, wait a second, what's
Alarm
happening
bells.
here? If not, yeah, exactly. If those alarm bells aren't ringing on their end right now, then I don't think anybody can help them.
I love playing Tracer into Zarya Shield and Morales Safeguard.
I mean, look, it looks like Tempest just said, here's how the alphabet goes, ABC, and then we go on with the rest. As we seem to have a little bit of a difficulty here, we'll resolve that most assuredly fast. But it seems like they're just sticking to one plan. Would that be fair to say?
Is it almost stubborn, though? Is it fair to call it stubborn, of like, we're playing this and we feel confident in it no matter what?
It depends if Tempest can react to it.
Yes, so for me it's like this. If you know what's coming, you know that a push is coming, for example. Let's take the CE example against Tempest. I think that was very telling.
Yeah.
If you know a push is coming your way, your opponent is holding 2 nukes, and you meet that onslaught early and really chip away with a Tracer, for example, throughout the entire time, then you have a chance of beating that. If you wait behind your gate or somewhere else on the map and never really meet the attack until it's right at your doorstep,
impossible to get through.
then this Tracer combo is never going to do anything for you. So I think that has to be the game plan. It can definitely work if you want to play Tracer Tassadar, but you have to adapt your playstyle to what you're facing.
Walking through the boss on this map is almost impossible.
From behind, right?
From behind, yeah. What he's saying is like you have to get back there. You can't just, like he just said, you can't just stand behind and then hope to engage beyond that. You have to find different ways to embrace that strategy. I was talking to Snitch the other day, and he's like, the boss is ridiculous. It's literally the strongest thing in the game. Like, it's got the slow, the death of putrid whatever
putrid
comes behind it.
I guess.
Yeah, pretty much putrid bile. You got the locusts that come out. They do a slow. They have damage. It's almost impossible to fight around that.
So just to harken back to those that may not have seen it yet, CE, Tempo Storm, Warhead Junction, very similar plan, what we think Roll20 is going to be running. And we had Brightwing, Tassadar, Tracer in the first 3 picks by CE. And now, Calder, you said it depends how you play with it, right? Not just what you draft. So what we saw then from CE they were still going for the value play, putting someone in the secondary lane, putting someone in the tertiary lane, and going for value play, XP, all these things that don't really matter anymore.
But that part I liked up to the point where they did it too long.
Yeah, right. Because they're level 8
Yeah.
versus level 7. It's like, let's get even more XP. But
Exactly.
in the meantime, your keep is dying.
And they sacrifice their own fort, for example. So as the push happens early on and the fort is attacked by the boss, so Tempest is pushing through, they soak 2 lanes. I'm happy with that. They sacrifice the fort. They say, okay, we can't hold that. Let's get some experience on the opposite lanes. But then you have to start defending. And I think they never realized we could lose a keep.
They're like,
here.
this is for real. This
Yeah.
is serious. So if that's what's going to happen, we're going to need to see Tempest react fast.
Just so you guys know, we're trying to solve the issues as quickly as possible. What we're going to do here is actually go to a commercial break before we restart the draft so that we can sort everything and get it good to go. So when we return, more here from the HGC 2017 Finals.
The 2017 Heroes Global Championship Finals are brought to you in part by Republic of Gamers, Intel, T-Mobile, and NVIDIA. Bravery and individuality are not qualities that the Templar typically program into their robots. But when the Protoss returned to take Aiur back from the Zerg, one heroic probe saved the day by warping in a pylon that allowed reinforcements to join the battle. Now in the Nexus, Probius has gained a spark of life that matches his boundless sense of curiosity and adventure. Probius is a strategic ranged specialist who uses potent area denial and ability combos to keep enemies at a safe distance. Though he doesn't use mounts, Probius has a base movement speed that is faster than other heroes. He can also use his Worker Rush ability for a temporary speed boost. Probius warps in pylons to regenerate his mana and power his abilities. When he is inside a pylon's power field, his mana is rapidly restored. Outside of talents, Probius can have a maximum of 2 pylons active at the same time. His first ability, Disruption Pulse, fires a burst of plasma in a straight line, damaging all enemies in its path. Warp Rift allows Probius to control the battlefield. When cast, it creates an anomaly at the target location that slows all enemies in its area of effect. If Probius hits a Warp Rift with a Disruption Pulse, it explodes for major area damage. When used together, Warp Rift and Disruption Pulse are a powerful 1-2 punch and Probius's preferred method of attack. Probius can also warp in a Photon Cannon that will attack any enemy nearby. Photon Cannons last for a short window of time and can only be placed near a pylon. If its pylon is destroyed, the Photon Cannon is deactivated. Probius's first heroic ability, Pylon Overcharge, temporarily turns his pylons into powerful long-range weapons. Selecting this heroic also passively grants a shield to all pylons. Nullgate, his second heroic, focuses more on battlefield manipulation than offensive power. Probius creates a temporary wall of energy at a target location that damages and dramatically slows enemies who remain in contact with it. Probius excels when he can get to an area early and set up his defenses. Place his pylons strategically so that they can power his photon cannons and regenerate his mana while also being safe from enemy attacks. Hide pylons in brush, behind walls, or in other places where they can't be easily located. If a photon cannon's pylon is destroyed, warp in another to reactivate it. When fighting against Probius, destroy his pylons in order to limit his effectiveness. Warp Rift has multiple charges and several can be active at the same time. Cast them near each other to slow enemies in a large area, or force them to leave it. Look for choke points and other tight locations where a well-placed Warp Rift can have a significant impact. Detonating Warp Rifts with Disruption Pulse deals high amounts of burst damage. Disruption Pulse's projectile doesn't stop when it hits a Warp Rift, and it can trigger multiple explosions in a single cast. Stacking Warp Rifts on the enemy team and detonating them all at once can be devastating. Warp Rifts have a short delay before activation, giving the enemy a brief window to escape. Pylon Overcharge works best when Probius has the maximum number of pylons active. Try to save it for when all of your pylons are up and running, and be ready to replace one if it gets destroyed. Pylons that are warped in after Pylon Overcharge is activated can also attack enemies until the effect expires. Remember that Null Gate can be deployed at any angle and direction within its targeting area. Creative and unexpected Null Gate placement can be more disruptive than a simple wall. While Null Gate is great for keeping enemies away, it can also prevent their escape. Use Null Gate to control the enemy team's movements and force them into a dangerous position. Probius is a brave little probe who proves that the greatest heroes can come from the most unexpected places.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the HGC 2017 finals as we continue on to find out who is going to be advancing on into BlizzCon. That's right, the round of 8 is just a moment away, potentially for these teams if they're able to achieve victory here. We were in the midst of a draft, and we kind of had to come out of that because unfortunately we had one player disconnect. So that has been attempted to be resolved, and in a few moments' time we'll be getting back into the draft. But as you guys were already theorizing, we are back in, and we can continue talking about it where we were.
Wow. Very nice, exactly where we were, and there we go with the ban finally. This is exactly where the draft was, so let's just continue. Oriel banned by Roll20 esports.
Yeah, so at this point, once again, we're talking about Roll20 potentially being very aggressive with nukes and bosses, and we have seen already CE fail to a similar strategy by a North American team. Tempest now also going into Tazza Tracer, which for a big map is fantastic, but they still need to identify what they're up against and of course try and counter what we already see unfold on the side of Roll20.
I really wonder if this is Vala or Illidan. Maybe they've got some tricks up their sleeve that we kind of alluded to. Vala, obviously, Q build does really well on the bosses, trying to clear those, get those fast clears. So does Illidan because he can pretty much start it without the entire team. They can still show on the minimap somewhere while you kind of peel off. There is that possibility.
I would actually not be surprised if they even throw a bit of a different twist on it and not only just go full on, hey, we need the bosses and go for it. We had a siege up comp with Sergeant Hammer from them at some point, because they also have to think about what happens if our opponent has actually already seen all of this. So I think a little bit more flexibility might be nice here.
Yeah, so what you're saying, for example, maybe they have like a good global soaker and they do a lot of pushes, but it's not about the boss, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, at this point, for example, you have already Greymane, which comes back to the point that Jehao made. You have someone that is really good at taking a boss and really helping the team. You don't have Vala with the Hungering Arrow, but you still have the potential to take it. But with Lily, I find that actually really interesting now, because we have a ton of protection, and that sustain to go through with the boss, with nukes, that can really be a big problem for Tempest.
This might sound ridiculous, but is there room for them to go tankless?
Yes. Oh,
yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
definitely.
I mean, apart from Zarya.
Yeah, it's really an interesting thing because Zarya kind of teeters on like, can she actually tank? Like, she takes a lot of damage, but it's not your traditional. It's basically she lacks like CC, right? Outside of expulsion zone.
Like normal warriors.
Yeah, generally you expect a warrior to at least have a slow like Johanna, right? But
I think Johanna makes sense. Murden is already taken, of course.
Yeah.
They could go Diva. Would they go Diva or Hammer here? I mean, after last draft with Roll20, we're just not sure anymore.
I mean, my mind gravitated towards Illidan because of the but it's a bit strange, very strange.
Anubrak is fine too. You get some beetles. Sonya's mostly spell damage, Anubrak is spell armor. It's not too strange to imagine. The beetles help with tanking the fort.
I think there's a very real threat if they do try and get too weird here. You make it a 10, you might be looking at a Dwarf Toss plus a Leap potentially for that backline style there.
And Murden can't help with that.
And the one thing that we
Oh,
can
no.
talk about is, of course, Tempest, because Tempest has an insanely good draft right now.
Yeah.
So when you
Yeah.
talk about straight-up team fights, which is what I would assume Roll20 is going to try and avoid, then Tempest absolutely shines.
No, it's true. We're like not talking about Tempest at all, right? But
Yeah.
it's a super classic meta draft. Tassadar Tracer component, Sonya Rhaegar.
Yeah, but overall, as you were mentioning and theorizing that the Diva potentially could come along, this is a very unusual draft from Roll20.
I mean, this looks like the 5-man ignore the other 2 lanes kind of push.
Almost, yeah.
You don't want to do it too soon, I suppose. You can't do it at level 1 Infinity, but it's gonna devolve into that at some point.
I mean, we expected something a little bit wacky, right? Especially with it being Warhammer, with it being Roll20, so we expected something along those lines. The Diva, you guys called it out already, makes sense after we've seen the composition that was used with Sergeant Hammer. It's a lot of protect, you try to zone a lot, and it's massive sustain thanks to the supports that we have here, and Zarya now on top of that too.
It was the closest game against Team Dignitas, save for a few pickoffs here and there. It looked really good.
Yeah.
Chaotic, but good.
And here's the thing, against any other Korean team, I would say they take you apart with better control, better execution, and just because they have the superior draft. But this is where I said already before we started the game, I feel Tempest lacks in comparison to Ballistics and to MVP Black, that they have these tiny problems oftentimes. I'm not sure it's going to take that.
Jay, how are your thoughts?
Yeah, you know, I'm looking at this, and the first thing that comes to mind is look at the first level 1, level 4 talents that we'll potentially see from Rhaegar and Sonya, potentially try and kind of split off on their own. I mean, if you're going to go do one boss, we have a 2-man squad that can potentially do the other. If you see the Lightning Bond, depending on what we see from Sonya at level 1, you might see that kind of push into the same style. Maybe they have an answer of their own. Maybe they have a few tricks up their own sleeve. I mean, they have a perfectly viable composition that can still soak at that point with Tassadar. You still have the roam gank potential with Tracer on a very large battleground. So there's a lot of potential, I think, on the side of Tempest.
Also, when we're talking about bosses, you have Expulsion Zone, you have Diva Explosion, and on top of that, you have Morales, who with Medivac can make sure that you get a couple of extra seconds if you actually want to go to a boss, or you can cross the map and put pressure on a different lane and maybe snipe a quick fort or keep. And that's what scares me about this draft, that you can really cheese around an opponent who would love to teamfight you because they have a superior team fight.
Hold on. Is Joe... Okay, when Zarya has energy and feel the heat, that's the single best siege damage in the game. Greymane does a lot of siege damage, naturally, in Worgen form.
Yeah, they can do the Medivac fly-in too.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
At
It's
any
like,
point.
they can play around them because I think they have to. The later this goes, the team fight of Tempest should be superior in nearly every situation. But if you only try to claim a boss, you have a couple of tools, Diva Explosion, Expulsion Zone, and then you play around them with Medivac. So
a lot of interesting aspects
they are
here
sneaky,
from both
they are
sides.
sneaky.
Definitely. Let's not delay this any longer. We're all very excited to see how this is going to play out for game number 1. So without further ado, let's head over to our commentary team to find out.
Thank you very much, Caleris. I'm very excited to see how this is all going to pan out. Tempest has had a pretty poor performance in this group so far. I like Roll20's idea to throw this unique draft at them because we just don't see this in Korea at all, Dreadnought.
And it is the North American special here, bringing it to Warhead Junction, something that Tempo Storm brought out way back, starting at the mid-season brawl, I believe, off the top of my head. It's a bit different than what we've seen in Phase 2, Part 2, but, you know, I think the analyst has nailed it. Talking about the diversity and the unique strategy, bringing it here to Tempest, they might have a shot.
Yeah, Glowring's wearing his Diva jacket today. It's going to be the second time they're bringing Diva to us in this group. But let's not delay any further. Let's jump into this very first game on Warhead Junction to see how these two teams are going to play their strategies. It's going to be mostly Tempest, I think, reacting, as you said, Dred, you know, and they have to play the team fight style. They're going to have to deal with this comp, find a way to break through it because it's just simply going to push hard. You have a lot of opportunities on this map to take an early boss, use those nukes. Of course, in blue, we have Roll20, a team that is running this strategy with the Lili Zarya. This is, don't try this in Hero League, don't try this in at home type of composition here.
It is a very unique strategy here. And again, you talked about a Tempest. Going to have to focus on responding. But as we see here, it is Tempest in red. We had Hyde on the Rhaegar, H82 playing Sonya. Lockdown on his Tassadar. Next up is we got Sign on his legendary Tracer. And finally, Honkono on the Murden.
So, obviously, Greymane moving into Wolfheart, going to make this a lot stronger. Feel the heat. These are the kind of opening talent picks that you'd expect from Roll20. This is no secret to Tempest. We have seen strategies like this in Korea before. I mean, once every blue moon, you could say, but how they deal with it, I mean, knowing about it is only half the battle, right? Dealing with it is another challenge entirely. We've seen Roll20 be able to have record game times with strategies like this in the past. I think this curveball is a great idea against this team that struggled so much in the group today.
Yeah, I would say, you know, taking a step back and looking at all of competitive heroes over the past year, most times when we see teams bring out a pocket strategy that kind of consumes an entire region, it's usually other regions that really cannot deal with it at first glance. And so I'm excited to see how Tempest responds here. I go back and I think of some of the compositions in the past where we've seen other teams not be able to deal with it. I believe it was there was a strategy that ultimately that happened at the Eastern Clash. Give me a moment. I'm going to recall it kind of lost here. I had it for a second and just poof. But essentially where it consumes everybody, nobody's able to deal with it unless you experience how that region specifically is learned to master it.
I mean, we saw in the Eastern Clash a lot of weird stuff like, you know, Korea unwilling to run Lunara until the end, and then the rest of the teams couldn't actually figure out how to deal with it. You can see how much damage Goku can actually do here, even in terms of what he can do to heroes. It's difficult to approach him, it's difficult to lane against him here because he does so much damage when given energy. Avoiding giving that energy to the Zarya is key, but unfortunately there's no counterplay for the cannon towers. They just simply will fire when she's in range. That's the strength of the strategy. You take that energy and push down these towers.
We've got ourselves the first warheads of this game. And talking about the strategy that North America prioritizes, you highlighted a little bit before, it's trying to concentrate on stacking a minimum double warhead, and then around that 7-8 mark, locking in the boss, pressuring heavy into one of those side lanes. Normally, you focus on one of those top or bottom lanes very early on here, but ultimately, Roll20 is not seem to have the same focus we have seen in the past here for North America.
Yeah, definitely. We're going to trade here 1-for-1 in terms of warheads, but that's okay. Roll20's idea here is to hold on to those. There are some exceptions. We have seen teams try to use them to control that boss. That is what ends up leading down that lane for the push they go for around 7, level 8, somewhere around there. Oh, Justin here, I think, is going to have a better performance than he did against Dignitas on the D.Va. Needs to make sure he does not die early, as Tempest is going to use this nuke very standard here, pushing down to get some experience. I think the big takeaway for what D.Va can do in this game versus what it did not do against Dignitas is the lack of garage on the side of Tempest that really made it tough for Justin to actually go up into those front lines.
Yeah, there was a lot of situations where it just felt like he wasn't being a big enough problem, the D.Va that you need, at least drawing enough aggro. We see an early warhead use here from the members of Roll20 up onto the top lane. But much like, looking at the difference of strategy here from the regions, we see the warhead concentrated onto the mid lane for Tempest, whereas again, Roll20 is focusing on a lane that has the boss. They are now going to send Zarya up to be able to start that right off here. And this is, again, what North America has done for so very long.
Okay, Tempest has realized this. They're rotating up. I look, Justin is actually trying to slow down the mounts here, dismounting Tracer as best he can. The rotation comes in. Rhaegar is camping, meanwhile, at the same time, so they have pressure in the other lanes right now. Will they be able to, without Rhaegar, though, stop this boss? That's the question. We're talking about a level 6 boss.
And Goku is just taking the healing beam there. We see H82 move in. A lot of pressure going on to Justin, but that's a D.Va. It's okay if he takes a lot of that damage, and as long as the energy exists there on to Buzz, the members of Roll20 are going to be comfortable.
Rhaegar's coming up here. He has Wolf Run. We're going to see Honkono engage. They're going to try to steal this. Honkono will die for it. Will they be able to grab the boss? Goku, full energy here on the Zarya. You can just see how much damage that could do. Looks like this is going to end up being a mistake for Tempest. 3 members dead. Boss is going to go over to Roll20. Let's not forget about the camp that went bottom, but it did so little. And now with this composition specifically, this boss will do more than any other comp could.
That was very impressive play there from Tempest, trying to stop Roll20 by diving onto the backline and make sure they got the blow up onto Morales, but the shielding from the Zarya, and more importantly, the kiting back that we saw the members of Roll20 have was enough to be able to push off Tempest. And the question is here, without the warheads, how much can we expect out of a 3-minute boss here for the members of Roll20?
I think they might realistically be able to get keep. I know we're talking about sub 5 minutes here, but Justin's holding on to that mech. I think he's going to try to use it for a remech. Can do a lot of damage to the structures while that's happening. You can see Goku again, just full energy, no counterplay here really with cannon turrets actually giving him that energy. Shielding coming into Justine as well. They're just looking to safely as much health as they can slowly move forward. Boss down to 1/4 health.
He gets interrupted on his dwarf toss out. I thought that might cost him his life, but he's going to be able to sustain up there. Mecha Explosion is going to drop and zone Tempest off. It looks like we see Roll20 claiming themselves a 5-minute and 15-second keep.
Yeah, shield's coming up here. I don't think they can save this, though. Oh my god, the grenade's just not enough damage. They are going to finally get this done. Meanwhile, you did see that nuke get dropped. Rhaegar down there, it's Hyde, who steals the other warhead, drops it down onto the fort, and is going to now start to head up here. But this is just one early lead that Roll20 has, and they need to make sure that this is always pressuring Tempest, always prep this lane, because otherwise, obviously, as Tempest does catch up and experience will eventually happen, they'll have the better team fighting comp.
And I wouldn't be surprised if the members of Roll20 make the transition down now to that bottom boss with the 10 advantage that they have, try and use this one warhead and get equal pressure that they were able to get up into that top lane. Looks like for now, they actually are going to concentrate on the pressure through mid.
Yep, they could just poke it mid. I think trying to grab Hyde here is actually a good idea. Honkono is here designing to scout this and stop this. Does end up getting his dwarf toss off here. They scout it. They're about to hit 10. It's so close. No minions for Hyde to get in bot lane to get that 10.
And that's why I was concerned about that mid-wave stop here for Roll20. He's got enough window now for the members of Tempest to possibly pick up their heroics as the boss now at 50% HP and counting.
It's just ticking coming through here. Sonya actually in mid. They are going to get it. 10's up now. Boss at 1/4 health.
Archon popped. Warhead's going to be thrown down.
Warheads are coming through here. We do see Lily dropping down the heels right now. Warhead does connect. Huge stuns coming through from Sonya, who actually took leap. Another nuke goes off here. This is crazy. Sign gets the Ancestral, but he's virtually alone here. Lockdown gets taken out by the big guns here, and Roll20 with a triple kill with a nuke and boss. They have to go through a fort. We're still early in the game, so respawns are going to come through quickly, but this is very well just going to lead to another keep.
Roll20 is showing Korea why North America loves Warhead Junction, or hates, depending on, the perspective. It's been back and forth, but ultimately they are really displaying the strategy that they wanted. 6-0 and kills on top of it all.
And this is a map that historically Koreans have permabanned. G-Clef and I over at HGC Korea make jokes about, if you watch HGC Korea, you probably have that map burned in on your screen with how it's always banned. Strategy we never see. Here comes the nuke. Honkono in behind.
He's going for a haymaker play over the wall. Maybe catch out Prismaticism Buds even if he wants to get that dwarf toss inward.
It's so risky though.
He's getting a flank.
He's getting a flank. Here he comes, looking for Buds. Oh, the cleanse.
The pre-cleanse.
Such a good cleanse.
There goes the haymaker down.
Okay.
Nice expulsion zone to be able to zone them out. The members of Roll20 though just backing away as that boss is focusing on the keep. Sonya unable to pull away.
Such a disjointed engagement for Tempest as well, and Sonya's down, H82 being gone means this is probably the core call for Roll20. The boss is gone, but they've got 5. They've got the best comp you could ever want to design to just simply go core here. 8 seconds till H82 comes up. Honkono's gonna have to try to buy time.
The shielding on the core is still up and just fine. Sign taking a bit of poke. He cannot go down. He's gonna drop the recall, get the Tassadar shield, and kite away. Very effective damage control away from the core.
Good defense matrix, but Buds is dead. This could be the defense here. Ancestral goes off onto Sign. Prismaticism is the next target here. D.Va going down now. Prismaticism, will he be able to get out? Hyde is going to jump into that wolf form as soon as he can. Goku just trying to slow down Honkono. Honkono does not want to fight this straight up. And Goku will finally be isolated here and taken out. Tempest lives, core at 95.
5-0 wipe there as North America bites off more than they can chew. This is going to lead to a double warhead for the members of Tempest, but by no means are they still on even footing. They're struggling when it comes to the experience here, and with a top and bottom keep are still missing on their side. So we need to be looking at where is Tempest going to go to try and get control back in this map. Personally, I would like to see them try and stack some mercenary camps, force the hand of Roll20, because you cannot let this game move on. The scaling of those catapults will be way too big of a problem 20 minutes in.
Scaling of the boss is coming through as well, which Roll20 is going to have control theoretically of. Haymakers really and Leap from Sonya, those are the only two real things they have for boss control, but we're talking about Expulsion Zone here. So much sustained healing, and Zarya with Feel the Heat is just going to burn through those hit point bars. Again, Tempest scouts this early, but this could be 3 for 3 bosses that Roll20 send. This one goes directly to core.
And Tempest has 2 warheads if they want to try and drop that right as Roll20 rounds 0 HP onto the boss. Ultimately, I feel like this is a very big risk for Roll20, and if they fail here, Tempest will very much pull ahead and get in the driver's seat of this game.
All right, so let's see. I mean, it's unfortunate that there's just no way for Tempest to cut them off here. I like what Goku's trying to do bait. If 2 members come through, he can Expulsion Zone them out. Wants to use that for boss control. Here comes the cleanse, though. Cubs coming through as well. So much damage done to Tempest. They're going to back off right now. But as the heroics wear off, they could try to turn this. No Avatar, such a problem here for Honkono. Is just going to have to let these heals come through. Didn't even take third wind.
Boss is sitting at 50% HP. Auto attack and Feel the Heat doing a lot of work. Tassadar is going to reveal 3 of the members of Roll20. Bud's always sitting back there in that chokehold, trying to make sure that Honkono can never get the initiation he wants. But as the boss drops, I am confident that Tempest is going to take this.
Okay, they're going to try to come in here. Honkono's on the boss point. There's the Warhead. I don't think Roll20 can contest this. I think it's time to get out. Justin's just going to come in here to try to zone them off. Could self-destruct here. In fact, Goku's on it.
They
Self-destruct gets a kill onto Tracer.
And now they get the boss is going to be moving onto the court. 2 members here of Tempest are going to die. Honkono is going to comfortably get the back, but not if H82 leads them to it.
That's a game over here, I think, for Tempest. Here comes the medevac. They're going straight for the core. They're going to hit that core before the boss. And, you know, with just 2 members alive here for Tempest, it's not going to be Haymaker that saves them, Honkono, I'm afraid. And here we go. Cups just coming in for the sustain. Core under attack. The boss isn't even here yet. Don't know if they'll need it.
Bud's is targeted. They're not going to be able to... Oh my gosh. Okay, wait a minute. Boss is coming down behind. For a minute, I was like, Roll20, you might be getting a little bit too risky here.
Goku survives too, and that is going to be the end of this core. Roll20 going to take out Tempest in this first game, using an American strategy here on American soil and on Korea's most heavily banned map, and against a Tempest that struggled in this group to adapt to the strategies of other regions. Roll20 is 1 win away from preventing Korea from getting out of the group stage in this format that has never happened before in HGC Global Finals.
And we talked about, or at least I tried to bring up a little bit in that last game about how there are strategies that kind of overwhelm regions. And one that came to mind that I failed to remember at the point in time was Roll20 esports approach on Brax's holdout was even enough for, you know, members like the European scene to be able to struggle against. And it does seem like whenever North America does find its, you know, maybe a one-trick strategy, until they unveil it at the international stage, it usually checks out for 1 win. It's just, the problem is, it's almost never 2.
Justin showing some great play on the Diva we failed to see against Dignitas. But before we talk about this any further, we're going to throw it over to Caleris and the Desk to see what they thought about game number 1.
That's right, strong win for Roll20 here in game number 1. And I'm pretty sure, as we were sat back there watching that, there was a moment where the 3rd boss was being taken and the Koreans kind of laughed for a second, that they were like, they're on boss again. So they really didn't anticipate a lot of what was going on, Kaldor.
Yeah, I feel it comes down to what we talked about when we are seeing the draft. There's 2 things that they can do. You can play around with Medivac around your opponent, and you have on-point control. And that's what won them several bosses. Every single team fight that the Koreans were willing to engage into. Yep. You saw a Diva Explosion coming out, an Expulsion Zone. It was always the on-point fight where you can't extend your own strength in the draft and in your composition. Roll20 exploited it and had that 1 win condition and played beautifully well to it. So yeah, they take the win.
At one point, after they took bot keep, they're like, hey, maybe we can try and casually approach the core. It was a little bit early. I would have liked to see them just kind of deathballed onto the core, taking a little bit